is time for us to visit Melissa Jenkins from Ekkono Solutions. She claims to be a geek who loves computers, and maybe it was that geekiness who led her to become CTO at Tele2 ITO before she became CSO at Ekkono. And fun fact, she is a glider pilot and is the team captain for the British gliding team in Britain. So it's safe to say that Melissa Jenkins isn't scared to take on a challenge and always aims for success. And that is why she's here to tell us, what does proof of concept success mean? Over to you, Melissa.
Yeah, so it's always a challenging one, what proof of concept even is for some customers. So I have a very quick presentation that we're going to talk about. And this is a little unusual for me because me and PowerPoint aren't best friends. But I thought we'd start off with, exactly what Ekkono does, because I think it's important to establish the fact that we are a startup. So therefore we have a perspective of proof of concepts. And we do a lot of proof of concepts. We're super good at them, like most startups. And that is because everything we do is new, leading edge. It's machine learning and IoT. That's pretty cool and pretty hard to get right. But is that success? Is success what happens when you get something out there and it works and the customer goes, yes, that is success. That's probably, it's stolen from our archives. So it might even be the first time we celebrated a proof of concept success. And this is what it looks like. If you're a startup, this is what you think a proof of concept does for you. It's a vision, it's a prospect. You get a customer, they're interested, you demonstrate that your magic works, you get a contract and you make money. And that is as simple as it should be, right? Sadly, and anyone who's worked in a big company knows that it's actually a little bit more like this. And having worked in lots of big companies in my time, and every single one of them has had a different product development process, a different way of putting in change requests, a different way of engaging with customers, a different way of selling. The first thing you realize is that actually the proof of concept is really just the beginning of the journey. It's this little star down in the bottom left-hand corner. And once you've done a proof of concept, what you've shown is that what you have is potentially useful to that customer. And then they've got a whole pile of different things they need to do in order to achieve value from that. And every single one of those customers has a different process for doing that. And that makes it really interesting as a startup. How do you make something that is actually useful to those customers? How do you make something that develops and works with their process? So if we look at this reality a little bit more, the process is different. There's lots of different departments involved. There's lots of different types of budgets in corporates and large companies. But actually, there's also this little catch at the very bottom, which is even if you succeed on all of this, you'll probably have to do a request for type process, an I or a P or a Q or a Z or an M or whatever the current letter is that goes at the end of that. And that can make everything take extra long. So let's look at some ways that you can short circuit that, because we could talk about the difference in views on what proof of concept is, but actually what's really useful is how to move past this and how to actually get your customer involved in buying your product. So therefore, to define success as a customer has used it and they've paid you for that proof of concept potentially, that's the start of it. But the reality is you need to use this time getting that customer hooked. You've got the door open, they're interested in what you have. You've demonstrated that it is useful to them. And that means it's probably useful to their end customers as well, which means it has business value to them. But what you need to do is make sure that they keep thinking about you, that you're part of that process, that if they do an RFX or a P or an I or a Q, that they're thinking about you and that they remember to call you, that they ask you how to do different things and they have that thought leadership. So I thought I'd talk about a couple of different processes for doing that, because there are different processes and there are different techniques, and you'll have been familiar with all of these, but the question is which ones are you actually using? So I'm calling these reality shortcuts, and these are different ways that companies have used to get from that proof of concept, from getting a bigger company interested in their product and actually getting it out there. So, a white label product is a fantastic example of this. Quite often these are as a service type products. So this is a product that you have developed, that you've built, that has good market fit for the customer you're talking to, that is something that adds value to those end customers. And it makes it really easy for them to expand their market size, to get into new bases or to add new features to their customers. And this is, it's a classic technique. Take something, tweak it to meet their needs and deliver it. This is almost guaranteed to hit into the RFP process before you get an actual delivery and an order. And you will, without a doubt, spend time tweaking it, adjusting the brand, playing with CSS, and every web developer loves playing with CSS and making it fit the customer's requirements, because there's absolutely no possible way that the way it looks is going to be right for them. But it does have the advantage that you're not demonstrating and building it into all of their different processes. You can have a solution that's quick and easy to implement that gets them up and running, which means that they don't need to figure out what it is that their market needs. All they need to do is figure out how to sell it and how to support it. So that's one, that's kind of keeping it simple for the end customer. Another potential one is that you can be useful. So lots and lots of great tools in the world, particularly if you're developing products. You know, Slack is a useful tool. It's not something that a company has to spend a long time getting budget for. It's not part of their product development process. It's actually part of their internal systems processes. You know, screwdrivers and hammers are all exactly the same. And Ekkono as well. You know, our library is something that is actually useful to them in the development process and reduces their overhead and the hassle of doing it. So that's a really simple way of getting something started earlier. So you could be part of the development process and you're adding value right up front rather than just at the end of the process. It's quite interesting to note that in almost every company, this is a different budget as well, because it's going to be part of the tooling budget. So it's much easier to get approval for this than it is to get approval for starting a new product development from scratch and for getting it built into a product. And once you get the people who are making these products hooked on your tool, they're much more likely to adopt it and use it for other things as well. And the third shortcut I wanted to talk about is kind of the standard fallback one, which is that you go for the free option. You know, open source is a great way of getting users. You know, and especially if you get your licensing structure right, then you get the option of charging for deployment on that. This is really so in the hardware space where you can't use GPL very easily because it is a deployment, which means you need to ship source code. So having a free option is a good way of getting into people who are actually making the real decisions on how something's implemented. It's often low friction, and it is great from an approval point of view. However, it's not always as straightforward as this. And if you look in the open source world, there's millions and millions of projects, and very few of them actually earn any money. And the ones that do typically do it around the services and the value that adds to that. It doesn't shortcut all the rest of the challenges that these people will have and the companies and the processes around how do they build this, what does the product look like, but it does get you in the door at the very first point. So just very straightforward, very simple, not too many different options, but there are many ways you can twist this. And I just have to say that the important thing about all of this is the communication. It's really, really important that as a startup or as a corporate, you understand the difference in success and what the process is and how that is going to work as you go forwards. And if you don't have that communication, then you haven't started forming a great relationship. And that great relationship is how you are useful and how you take this forward and make it something that is interesting for the end customer. Now, I don't have a whole lot more to say on this. I'm notorious for doing super fast presentations. The guidance is that you're supposed to have 1 slide per minute. I reckon probably actually it's more like 5 slides a minute for me. But yeah, I'm sure that Rania and I can have a really interesting discussion about exactly what this actually means and how you can make more use around that. But I just want to say, don't give up. Just because you've got a proof of concept and your corporate or customer has stopped being involved and interested, it doesn't actually have any impact on your ability to take this to the next level. You just need to keep knocking on the door, asking them how they're going. Talk to them about different ways that they can actually gain value from your product and refine your offering so that when you are ready to go live, you have everything they need. You have the operational capabilities, you have the ability to deliver this as technology, but you also have the ability to work with them and evolve and make their product better long-term. Because it does take time to get stuff out in the market, and it's always a lot longer than you think it's going to be as a startup. And I think that pretty much covers my super quick introduction on ways that you can make your proof of concept something a bit more than just the flash in the pan and never talk to them again.